Welcome in the Geo Dialogue series, and thank you for attending. We can recognize some faces. We have been here very regularly. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the new ones. So this dialogue is a little bit special compared to the others that were going into the geodata management principles, but I will introduce the series and then our guest and the topic for today. I will share my screen first. So today we will talk about the self-assessment tool, and I will make a short introduction. Then we will have a talk from Lionel Ménard, who will present how this tool has been built. Then a presentation from Nicolas to present how this has been used by the eShape project. Lionel will give a testimonial on the benefits for a pilot, because Lionel had several roles into the project. Not only was part of the project management team, but he was also in charge of the development of a pilot. And then we will discuss about the considered future for this self-assessment tool with Marie-Christine Jacquemont. Oh, we don't have our presentations. Something is going wrong here. Normally we have a slide to introduce Bent and I. Okay, it was just jumping too fast. Apologies for that. Some house rules. Please mute your microphone if you are not talking. And if you want to intervene, you can raise your hand under the reactions and then wait for the moderator to give you the floor. What is the GeoDialogue series? The geodata sharing and data management principles have identified that the data management principles have to be advocated. This group decided to build this dialogue series to raise the awareness about the principle and their expected benefit. And this is very important because we want to build some resources that will be sustainable and published into the GeoKnowledge Hub and also on YouTube. And why is it important now? It's because we want to mainstream these principles. There is a lot of emphasis from diverse stakeholders right now to push the sharing of in situ data. Also because right now we are developing artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all these very smart algorithms need good in situ and good understanding of the current situation to really validate and calibrate their products. So this dialogues series emphasize this perspective on in situ, but also law and policy, because what we have identified is that if you want to make the data usable and support the upscale of the use of the data, we need to raise the awareness on the law and policy and the licensing of the data. And also we want to make the connection with the GeoWork program. So if you have attended the previous dialogues, you have noticed that we have invited many flagships and many initiatives from the GeoWork program to contribute to these dialogues. So we have run all these dialogues before. We are right now in the one which is supposed to be the last one. For those who attended the usability, we have had some disruption during, we have been asked during the dialogue. And so this usability dialogue will be rerun tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. And we invite you to stay aware about that because it's a very important one. And so in our logic, except that we will catch up with this usability dialogue, the data management self-assessment tool is the last dialogue that gives a lot of meaning to the previous one. So this is a very important one, and we hope you will understand the connection clearly. The geodata sharing principles are here as a reminder, because this is why we want to emphasize the data sharing, and you will find it in the slide deck of this presentation that will also be published on the GeoKnowledge Hub. These are the different data management principles. The curation was the last one, and we will see today how this self-assessment tool allows to go in each of the principles to assess the work of the developers in relation to these principles. What is very important also is that we have tried to emphasize the mapping between these principles and the FAIR principle, which are a driver for a bigger community than Geo. And we will find this mapping also into the tool today. So my name is Marie-Françoise Guadreau. I am a director, Europe director with the OGC Innovation Program, with a focus on initiatives related to Earth observation. I'm involved in many initiatives important for Geo. I have been involved in XGEOS now. I am involved in eShape and in InCase with a project supported by EEA to raise the awareness and support the awareness on these geodata management principles and this focus on in situ. I am involved in the Geo program board and supporting Geo within OGC in many initiatives. And I co-organize these dialogues with Bente Liljaby, who has been a member of the Geo community since 2004. And she has had several responsibilities in major Norwegian agencies, and she has connected all this work with the Geo and via the Geo program board and other initiatives since a long time. During the presentation, you can anytime communicate via Zoom, and we will make some poll to engage with you. This is because we call that a dialogue because we want to encourage the communication. We really want the audience to feel engaged. And so this is why the chat is available anytime and the polls are there to help you connect with the speakers. So we will begin. This is where I began my presentation. This very special dialogue. I have introduced already the panel. And we will begin with Lionel, with a research scientist, with Armin, the Center for Observation, Impact and Energy. And he's a key person for many things. I have been working with Lionel in all the projects I have been involved in since I joined OGC. He has a long experience on the management of Earth observation, but in a very applied way. He has a full vision from the data collection to the data management and to the data use. And this is what makes Lionel a very valuable speaker. And with that, I'll let you the floor, Lionel.
Thank you, Marie-Françoise, for the nice introduction. So directly we'll share my screen. I guess you can see the slide in
yes.
Full mode. Okay.
We can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, this presentation is about the recent release of what we call a self-assessment tool for creating data management plan, and it has been conducted in a eShape project, which is an European-funded project. And my colleague Nicola and I will try to provide you with the general objective approach and finding and what we have been able to catch up so far with this tool. So just a brief slide about the project itself. So as mentioned, it is a project funded by the European Commission. It's a contribution to EuroGeo, the regional geo for Europe. You see the numbers, it's a quite big project with a lot of partners. And what is interesting here is that we have 37 pilots, where 10 of them has been onboarded in the process of the project in 7 showcase. So the showcase should remind you the basic social benefit area of Geo. And from this, we will promote user uptake of VO data, mainly Copernicus and GEOS, and try to design co-design pilot with a user-centric approach. And from this big project, we have focus regarding the data management of, so data management plan was part of the initial project proposal. So we were basically engaged regarding the European Commission to provide data management plan for the project. And it has been focused on the pilots. What were the pilots dealing about when we talk about data input, data output, and process potentially? That means that we've been able to collect 37 data management plans from the wide showcase that I've presented you in the previous slide. And I think it is very interesting findings, and Nicola will illustrate this in the presentation afterwards. So this data management plan exercise has been conducted in 4 phases, which has the last one has ended up in May 2022. And by design in the project, we have associated to the eShape project 2 different policies. So the geodata management principles and the FAIR principles. And in support to this, and with all this exercise, doing so, we have basically worked our way into providing what we call now a self-assessment tool that has been able to collect all those data management principles, and that has been packaged now into a tool which is available on the GeoKnowledge Hub. I will show you this in a minute. So, okay, so the data management plan, the various phases are interesting to have a look at too, because basically we start at month 6 of the project, so 3 years ago. And basically we see that there was a very limited familiarity, limited focus on the difference between FAIR and the geodata management principle from all the pilots. So based on this, we conduct some initial assessment, and we have been able as well to be involved in building some what we call comprehension about those, what is the data management plan, what are the flavor of the Geo1, what are the flavor of the FAIR, how do they overlap, and we build this thanks to a series of webinars. Then based on this, we have provide what we call a Canva and a tool to support the data management collection. And this Canva and the tool has been based on the data management principle implementation recommendation from Geo, and the analysis that has been done on the overlap between Geo, FAIR, namely from Bob Chen and Bob Downs, and as well try to provide the idea of the Geo label in our tool. In the meantime, we have introduced new concept that was basically initially done in order to properly manage the life cycle of the data management in the project, and it brings some basically new ideas and new concepts that we think are very valuable for data management plan. They are what they call the status, the trajectory, the level of interoperability, and the exception. And especially the trajectory make the data management plan a bit more a living document than something that you feel at the beginning and basically which is stopped. Then we compile everything, provide the report to the European Commission. And then finally, we have run a final round of 22 pilot trajectory in a second time. And we have conducted as well the review of the last onboarded pilot that we have conducted in the last part of the project. So you see, you know for sure this picture between the geodata management principle and the FAIR analysis. You see here that there are some analysis that have been made about the overlap between some of the DMP from Geo and the one from FAIR, and this is exactly what we have been able and try to express in our tool. So you see, this is a snapshot of the data management self-assessment tool, where basically, especially if you look at the left side in FAIR 3, you know that DMP are split in 10 data management principles and FAIR in 4 main one. And you see that in FAIR 3, when you are filling this, basically you can go back to DMP1, which is basically DMP3, which is deal about the interoperable approach in FAIR. That means that we've tried to ease the work of the people who will fill this data management principle information. If you fill basically DMP1, you will be basically ease the work of basically filling the one from FAIR, and same for DMP2 with FAIR2, and so on and so forth. So basically, we try to provide a much easier workload for people who maybe have already filled information in DMP, which are relevant to the corresponding FAIR one. Some new concepts that we have introduced, which we think are valuable and which are implemented in the tool. namely the trajectory. That means that we have been able to think that this tool can be a living document. So maybe you can start with something question in the DMP that you are maybe not aware of, but could be of interest. And then you are not bound to do it only once, but you can define some period of revisiting your DMP because you have maybe worked on your data, because you know more about your data, because you have some experience that you have gained throughout the life cycle of a project. And we think it was interesting to have this trajectory to be part of the DMP. And as well, we have provided some idea about the level of compliance, level of interoperability, which makes sense to the trajectory. So you can start to say, okay, maybe this question is applicable but not started. And at the end of the trajectory, it will be either partially implemented or fully compliant. Same for interoperability, same approach. And as well, we have been able to manage exception. You see maybe commercial restriction may apply to your data, and then you will not be maybe fully interoperable, or maybe something which is not relevant to your pilot. So we accommodate this in the tool. You see it's basically a snapshot of the final document. So you basically will be able to template, to have your own logo, look and feel, and you will be provided with this document, which is ready to go, export in PDF file from the information you will have filled in the tool itself. So the tool itself is available in the Geo Knowledge Hub package. So I have created this because there was an interest from Geo to benefit from the outcome of this contribution from eShape pilot. So we have done some polishing, make it more generic because it was coming from a project, and we will package everything in order to provide it to the Geo community. So now Geo host and take over the DMP dissemination, as they are basically operating the Geo Knowledge Hub. I've created this package, and it is freely available and downloadable. So you see that it's an archive. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet where you will have all the DMP and all the FAIR all together, and you will be provided with an export tool as well with a templating document to basically support your look and feel for your own purpose. What we learned so far. So from a project management perspective, we see that there was a good participation. Of course, mainly because people were mandated to fill the DMP, but it's been able to provide a large representation of various EO sector. So very valuable, let's say, contribution from that perspective. We have a good feedback from the users of our project regarding the simplicity of the tool. Excel is a quite well-known and easy, basically support for doing so. And as a project management, it's a very good, let's say, support when you are basically doing the monitoring of your pilot, to have a DMP that provides you some various steps, you know, the 4 steps that we had in order to basically monitor the development of your pilots. In our case, we have 37 pilots in a row to monitor. So again, the self-assessment tool has been contributed to Geo. We plan to scale it up in order to have some more, let's say, follow-up on this. And it will be the scope of the presentation from Marie-Christine Jacquemet in the last time of this session. We plan to have a more reliable and scalable open infrastructure, namely OPDOR, to provide machine actionable GeoDMP. It will be done in the future. And I think that Marie-Françoise has mentioned the so-called Trojan, let's say, buzzword. And this is what I will present after the presentation of Nicolas, which is to come. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lionel. So I think that you have understood that this tool has been drafted by eShape, but also we had some alpha tester who was Lionel, and he will present afterwards his experience. And we had 37 beta testers, meaning that we can guarantee that the tool is usable by any domain, and this is what also Lionel has emphasized. There is a question in the chat. Marie-Christine, can you look at it to see if you think you will answer in your presentation, or do we address the question now?
The question from Claire?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, we provide an exchange format that is compliant with the RDA DMP common standard. Yeah, in the case of DMP OPDOR, yeah. Yes.
So the question was, is this tool compliant with the International Research Alliance Common Standard for Machine Actionable Data Management Plans?
Yes.
And so Marie-Christine answers that it is the case. Okay, so I will show the results of the poll. I hope you can see them. So in the audience, we have 36 people who have already written data management plans, 29% partially, and 36% who have never done it, meaning that this tool can help, I think, a lot of people here. And we will discuss later if the ones who have already written or partially written think that the tool could be useful for them. Any other question or remark?
I think
No?
you answered the question from Cyril Joda. Yes.
Yes, I answered the question from Cyril Joda that the tool is addressing the geodata management principles and the FAIR principles.
Yeah.
So I will now introduce the next speakers with Nicolas Fichot. Nicolas Fichot is a senior consultant working with a long experience in renewable energy. He plays the role of quality engineer in eShape, and is coordinating the implementation and the review of all these data management. He introduced the idea of trajectory, and he will explain how this tool has been useful for eShape. Lionel? Nicolas, sorry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marie-Françoise. Good afternoon, everyone. I assume you can see my screen and my slides, correct?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Lionel already introduced the self-assessment tool for data management plan. And in a following presentation, he will show the value of developing a data management plan for your own internal purposes when you are developing an Earth observation based application. For eShape, in particular, one of the challenges we had was a specific key performance indicator for the project, which was to assess the level of compliance of all the pilots involved in eShape to the GEO and FAIR data management principles. And actually, this is where the story, sorry, why is it going down? And this is where the story of this tool started, is because we had to find a solution to be able to extract this indicator. So it gave birth to the tool, but also we had to find a way to consolidate the results of this portfolio of data management plans that we gathered in order to provide an indicator to the European Commission. We believe that this experience has value for entities or organizations that would be managing a portfolio of investments in Earth observation application, meaning, for example, if a grant or a subsidy is given to teams or research teams or developer or private companies to develop such application, maybe one parameter could be to develop a data management plan, which is essentially part of a sustainability plan or a business model, of course, and be able to consolidate the progresses that have been made due to the public funding that is being received. In our case, what we wanted to do is not only to monitor the level of compliance, but also to show that eShape had an impact on increasing the compliance. This is why we have two notions. We have the notion of level of compliance, which Lionel introduced, and the notion of trajectory, meaning that we had several rounds of data management plan that were updated, and each time we were asking to the pilots to describe the status where they are now and the status that they would expect at the end of the sprint development. We came back at the end of the sprint development, and they were updating the status, and we were comparing what was expected from what we actually got in terms of level of compliance. So to be honest with the audience, the original concept of the GEO data management principle are not designed to be compiled in such a way that you can get a graph like this one, but we had to create it in order to provide a level of monitoring. What we have done is that we have asked in their data management plan for each of the 37 pilots involved into the project to declare that their feeling or the level of achievement they would foresee at the end of the first sprint for the development of eShape. And we were asking if they feel that maybe the parameter, the dimension is not applicable to the pilot. Maybe it's applicable but hasn't been started. Maybe it will be at the end of the sprint partly implemented, or maybe at the end of the sprint I would be fully compliant. So this is how we started, and we are able to look dimension by dimension on the feeling that the audience, this pool of pilots that we are engaging with, the level of comfort that they had with the different principles. And we see that at the beginning of the project there, we had an average level of compliance of some 37%, meaning partly implementing and ongoing or fully compliant. It was only 1/3 of the pilots engaged. On this basis, there was a specific work stream inside the project that looked into increasing this level of compliance. And it was the task in particular of Marie-Françoise, who organized workshops and seminars in order to increase the level of familiarity of the pilots with the different dimensions of GEO. So after a first round of development, after a first sprint, we started a second sprint, and there we made an evaluation of the level of compliance after this second sprint. So you see that initially we started with a level of compliance of around 1/3, and at the end of the sprint 2, we were able, at least for GEO, the data management principle, to reach a level of compliance that would be almost 2/3 of compliance. Well, of course, you would say, well, these numbers are not accurate because you can look into the details and yourself as an expert, for example, look into if this level of compliance that is being declared is legitimate or if it should be further disaggregated with nuances, etc. Yes, certainly. Right here, we have a large portfolio of application and pilot, and those dimensions are relatively difficult to capture. What it tells us is that the project, due to targeted capacity building activities, had an impact on increasing the level of compliance overall for the adoption of GEO data management principle. What is also interesting, and this is not a work we have done, but we see that there is a level of comfort depending on the dimension we are talking about. And some of the dimensions are not necessarily something that the pilots would immediately grasp. So you can see that there is a lower level of compliance for GEO10, persistence and resolvable identifiers, and GEO5, for example, data traceability. So this is not something where we had the possibility to drill into, but there seems to be an unequal level of familiarity with the different parameters, the different dimensions, sorry. But yeah. Then from the compilation of all these data management plans, we are also able to look pilot by pilot and community by community to the level of familiarity they have with the different dimensions. So I'm not going to go into detail, but here, what you have, each of these boxes, each of these lines show the response and the level of compliance for each of the pilots that we have, and the squares, they delimit the showcases that we have. So we have 7 showcases: agriculture, health, energy, etc., etc. And within each of the showcases, we see our different pilots and how they responded. If we make an average by showcase, we see that there is a different level of culture and let's say data management culture in the different communities that are gathered into the project. Again, not something that we could look into the project, but we found that it's interesting to see that there is a different familiarity or a different level of education of the geodata management principle through the different communities. If we assume that our sample is representative, of course, but there we see that there was some consistency within the different showcases. We also did the same for FAIR. So FAIR is a little bit less easy to score because there, so it's declarative, but then in each of the FAIR elements you have sub elements, so we had to go very granular. But then the pilots anyways were able to declare if they believe their pilot would be consistent with the FAIR principle. Either it's not applicable, it's not started, but applicable, it will be ongoing, or fully compliant at the end of the sprint. Again, we started with an average of 1/3 of compliance that was expected from the pilots, and after a specific targeted capacity building action, we reached a 2/3 compliance. Once more, depending on the dimension we are talking about, we have a level of compliance that will be varying. And maybe in some cases, if that's important, we could go for targeted capacity building action on subtopics of FAIR for dimensions that are not necessarily mastered by the audience. So this is the outcome of this massive analysis from the project perspective. As I said, the data management plan itself and the toolbox has definitely a value for a team that is developing an Earth observation application in itself. That's an outcome that could be part of the sustainability plan and something that would, for example, help an investor to be convinced about the solidity of an application, that is for sure. And also for portfolio manager, there are possibilities, we believe, to aggregate those results into some kind of scorecard in order to see the impact of the financing, the public financing that is coming on a portfolio of activities, such as the one that we had initiated. That's why we thought it's important to transmit these results in the perspective of, in the future, having an EuroGeo initiative, potentially with a large array of applications that are being developed in parallel. Maybe that could be an inspiration for a future framework of such sort. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Maybe you can unshare the screen. So in fact, you have seen Lionel was introduced why and how we have built the tool. And now Nicolas, how we have used the tool, showing that it is really, again, really usable. So let me see if we have some questions in the chat. So Lionel has put the link to the tool on the Knowledge Hub. Dominique Charles asks how he can participate in the polls. I hope you have found them, except if you have forbidden the pop-up on your screen. And Claire Austin says, is there a feature compliance comparison table available that includes RDA, MAD data management standards, geo data management principles, eShape, DMP roadmap, DMP online, DMP tool, DMP assistant, OPIDOR, Argos, DSBW, and DAMAP? Marie-Christine or Lionel, do you have some answer to this question?
I have a point too.
Oh, Nicolas has a point, sorry. Go on, Nicolas.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. But we should keep in mind that there is a transaction cost on developing a data management plan. So it's something that is extremely helpful and impactful for a developer of observation application, that is for sure. Yet there is a time that has to be invested into filling the tool, the data management plan tool that we develop, and also there is time needed and investment on education in the field. So of course it's possible to build comparative tables, etc., with the different tools and whatsoever. But I believe that most of the time should be spent on education in the Earth observation community, on not only the content and how to assess those different parameters, because it's not entirely obvious sometimes the way it is formulated, and educating also on the impact and usability, the value of doing so, because there is a cost, and many project developers would essentially spend minimum time on this kind of exercise, which from eShape we learned that is not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is really to invest time, because you will eventually save resources at the end. You won't have to redo, for example, your entire pilot because you missed something on licenses, right? That's the point I wanted to mention.
Thank you, Nicolas. Yes, we have discovered this tool to be very valuable in eShape. What I can say is that when you look at the answer, again, it's a self-assessment tool. So sometimes the pilots who are the most advanced are more demanding towards themselves than others. So you have to remember that this is a self-assessment tool, but it is still very usable. I will share the results of the second poll. So the question was, have you used the data management self-assessment tool? And so, yes, 2 people who join our webinar are coming from the Opidor network community. Then other tools, 3 people, over the 15 answers, and no tools, a big majority. So I think that you will appreciate that we can have a tool here. It was very important for eShape because we needed to support our pilots to contribute and benefit from this tool and to standardize a little bit the approach. This is why it was so needed, but I'm sure that any project can find a benefit with the tool. Any comment from the panel on that, on the results?
Yeah, no, just a short point on the question from Claire. So as she mentioned, basically some, let's say, various principles, one after the other. So there's no eShape principle per se. eShape has made the exercise of gathering what was already part of the core of the proposal, saying that we are going to cope with geodata management principle and FAIR, and put into practice the so-called diagram that show those overlap and try to orchestrate in a way which could be, let's say, implemented in a Excel spreadsheet, in a tool that can collect this and try to ease again the process of collecting those data, but taking into account those overlap. But there was no per se eShape principles.
Very good point, Lionel. We did not invent new principles. No. We really push the compliance to the existing principles
into practice.
From GEO and from FAIR. FAIR was required from the H2020 European Commission projects, and GEO, because all these projects is for the benefit of GEO, and it was very important for us to be compliant with these principles. Very good point. Thank you. We will move to the next speaker. So I share my screen to introduce Marie-Christine. So Marie-Christine Jacquemin.
I guess, Marie-Françoise, that it's in the order. I was supposed to provide feedback from user because it makes sense.
You are right. I do not introduce Marie-Christine, and I will not introduce you again, except that you are changing hat. Before you have explained with a vision from the project management. And here you take your hat of a pilot. I'll say it again, because you have such a long experience in Earth observation, you have the full vision from the design and the management of the system, but also to the application and the use. And this is what makes your talk very valuable. So here you take your hat of a pilot and you present us how valuable it has been, even if this tool was made for people who we wanted to raise the awareness about the principle. You were already very aware, but you will explain us how the tool has helped you go further. Thank you, Lionel.
Indeed. Thanks, Marie-Françoise. So I guess you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, so then I was part of one of the 37 pilot development, and I will try to provide you 2 concrete examples between those GEO and FAIR principles that we can basically learn from and how it looks like in a more practical way. So how we talk about data management principles. So in each of the pilot, you have data, and in the pilot that we are developing for supporting the PV penetration at urban scale, it was in the renewable energy showcase. We have one pilot, and here I just want to illustrate what we have to deal with. So this pilot has data as input, providing a process, and providing data as output. So this is typically the DMP are typically the room where you need to explain about your data. So in our case, we have several types of data as input. They're basically either what we call external or internal. That means that in our pilot, we are going to fetch data from existing service. So you see this, for example, in the CAMS radiation service, the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service namely CAMS radiation, where we get the data from all sky irradiation, and we request this from WPS. We have the same for digital elevation model from SRTM NASA. We have data from the IGN, the National Institute of Geography in France, where we are gathering some digital surface models, so high resolution data in 10-25 centimeters from the building and the city. we have data from the MERA temperature, and we have some internal data. So we need to know all those data. And then we will have, why I do this? This is because we have to ask ourselves where those data come from and what can we do with those data. And it will be the purpose of the next slide. Then we build a process. It's an OGC web processing service with the support of a Python Jupyter notebook. And then we provide some output, just provide you as a matter of having some insights. So this is the type of output that we are going to generate, time series of irradiation, which include the shadow effect on the building at 1 meter resolution. So each of the little dot that you see is 1 meter resolution that take into the shadowing effect. And it's very important for people who are basically building and tiling PV system on the roof, because they want to know where basically the shadow has an impact at a given location of the given surface. And it will be provided as Climate and Forecast Convention, NetCDF, let's say, data format, which is what we call a business-ready format. Okay, so you remember this. And here I want to take just one example, let's say DMP3 in Geo, which is data encoding, which has been analyzed to be overlapping and be the same more or less with FAIR3, interoperable. And I want to provide you a kind of closer look of what are the questions that has been implemented in the tool, in the DMP, because we have not reinvented the wheel. We have taken the question which were part of the tool, and we have implemented into this Excel spreadsheet. But this is the question that you have to deal about. So if you go at GeoDMP3, data encoding, basically you have a set of recommendation and guidance. So the recommendation is written word per word, say that your data should be structured and encoded in making them align with international standard. Oh, okay, so maybe you ask yourself, oh, is the data that I'm using are basically aligned with international standard? And then they provide you some guidance. And basically they want either you to adopt or to use data that may be according to this international standard. And they want to basically encourage you to facilitate interoperability. And for this, they provide you some guidance. There are many others, but for the, let's say, space in the slide, I've not introduced everything. But basically, you have to deal with so-called interoperability using mature services, such as OGC WMS, OpenDAP, and NetCDF. And it's the ideal case for me, because I show you in the previous slide that we are using already this, at least for NetCDF, as an output, OpenDAP potentially for requesting those data. And if you look at FAIR, as we claim to be taking the two into account, it's called what we call FAIR3, interoperable. And then you have to read carefully, because there are some overlap, because this FAIR3 is giving you some recommendation about the way to deal with interoperability, meaning that each computer system has the knowledge to talk to each other, and they provide you guidance saying that, hey, if you want to implement interoperability, you need to be based on what they call control vocabularies, UUID, digital object identifier, good data model. So it's not 100% the same wording and the same phrasing, but it deals about the same thing. I just pick up this one in one of the many questions that you have all along the 10 DMPs for Geo, because this is the type of question that you have to deal with when you want to express the view and the content of what is your data about in the framework of filling this DMP. Another very, very, very touchy and interesting topic is the case of license. We have experimented this in eShape, and I personally experiment this myself, because basically this idea of license is really explicitly expressed in FAIR4, which say in one of the questions, specify how the data will be licensed to permit the widest reuse possible. It is a key concept, because basically if you want to allow without any ambiguity the user of the output of your service, the result of your service, to use your data without, again, any ambiguity, they should be aware about what is the license which is attached to your data, what they can do with it. Is it proprietary? Is it fully open? Do they have to credit anything? And then, because you are using data, you remember the list of data that are presented as input, those data have already some license attached to them. And I myself was supposed to know the process and the data, and I didn't pay attention to this. And this is why it is very important. So I need to do the second loop, the trajectory of the DMP. I do it in the second phase, say, hey, yes, there are some licenses that are attached to that I'm using. Why didn't take this into account? And then I go back, redo all the things, and move from CAMS radiation, SRTM from NASA, digital surface model from IGN, and I look at each of the license, and this is the right side of the table, and look at the lineage license which are attached to my data. That means that for CAMS, I'm a lucky guy because I've mostly have to deal with CC BY, Creative Commons only citation type of license. NASA are fully open. IGN has a EtaLab model, which is basically similar to CC BY. So the only concern I have using those data is to make sure that I will be in a position to credit those data in the result that I am providing. And indeed, I start basically brainstorming about what will be the license attached to the result that I am providing as a result of my pilot. And of course, I need to credit inherited data that I have used. And then I decide for my pilot that the result will be as a Creative Commons CC BY. So I encourage the people to credit the data that they will be used based on the result of my service. We have a component which is a Jupyter Notebook. It will be CC BY as well. The web processing service will be a proprietary one with only a disclaimer of liability. And of course, none of the original input data that I will use, I will make them directly available from the tools. That means that if people want to use, they will go to each of the data provider. So again, this is, I think, two examples from the data management plan that you have to fill, 2 questions out of 10, but they are crucial, I think, about what's going to be the life cycle of the development of your pilot, of your application, whatever it is, when it comes to talk about the data, input data, output data. So as a lesson learned and way forward, so again, from a pilot perspective, and in pilot, I will maybe extend the concept to any things that deal, even if it's internal process, about EO application that take data as input and provide data as output. So we think, and I think that this is what I call a very formal framework to brainstorm about data. So if you take the exercise again in your own lab about a product that take data as input, provide data as output, making this under the umbrella of a FAIR and a Geo data management principle framework, and the tool will help you to do so because it's really easy to fill and to have the question ready, definitely will bring you a new perspective, such as I testify here doing the exercise in eShape. Of course, it has a huge impact on sustainability of your product because you have to deal with the license and you have to be fully aware about what you are taking as input, given the fact that maybe it's not your own input, but you're benefiting from other initiatives. Of course, the tool helps you and reward you with automatic data management principle generation. So you save it and you have a PDF for your own, maybe for your funder or your internal process. Nicolas just touched upon this, but the DMPs, whether they came from FAIR or Geo, they are a bit data oriented. So when it comes to service, which is a mix of many things, it's a bit, or it's not straightforward to answer to each of the questions if you are basically dealing with a service, what we call interoperable services. And in practice, as I show, it is not easy to immediately answer to all the DMP questions, and the trajectory concept that we bring definitely is a plus, because maybe you can start with not answering the question because you don't know about it, but in the framework of a given time span, whether it is a project or an internal process, maybe you will come up with some answers. And I think it is the good thing about this trajectory concept that we bring aside from the geodata management and FAIR principle. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Lionel. One of the goals of eShape was also to support the pilots to go from research to business. And the license is very important because this lineage of licenses and crediting is at the core also to encourage people providing in situ to share the data. They need to make sure that they are well credited, so people paid attention to the request of crediting the data. So it's very much in the core of our activity. Bente, you have raised the hand.
Yes, thank you very much, Lionel. I love that you call this the Trojan horse, that when you you thought, and I think the message, I think that's your message, that you think you know the data management principles well, but when you go down deep into the material, you will discover that you still can learn by using this tool then. But I have a question concerning the complementarity between the geodata management principles and the FAIR principles. Is there anything, maybe you've said it that I just didn't capture, but are there any aspects that you would like to highlight where these two sets of principles are complementary?
It's echo as well, a comment from Claire about the so-called control vocabularies, which I mentioned. So the thing here is that for me, it's different. Again, so, the DMPs that I've presented is illustrating this. It's different type of wording. It's very difficult to really go deep down into all what is offered. If you want to cover everything, we have not. So for answering Claire, we have not talk and support any, let's say, standard vocabulary regarding the pilot itself. So we've tried to, frankly speaking, to pick up the minimum requirement, which is asked by each question, to try to see if what we are developing is fitting with this. Of course, we can, you are not, it's unbelievable that you will be 100% compliant to all the questions about all the GeoDMP and the FAIR. For me, it's it will be magic, but it will never happen. So you try to do your best, but the most important things to do is to read the question, to read each of the question, and to ask yourself, frankly, I am able to answer do I understand the question? I'm able to answer the question. Maybe not now. Trajectory, maybe in a year from now, or I'm very fine with this. In the case of the GeoDMP3, I was fully grateful to see this NetCDF. This is exactly what we do. Haha, I'm done with this one. But there are plenty of that I was not as, let's say, easy answering this. But again, it challenged me. I get it on the side of my head and saying, hey, maybe I have to work on this. Vocabulary is one of these. We have not deal about any vocabulary in the framework of our pilot. Maybe it's the case for others, I don't know, but this is, so don't know if it. And just to come back to the Trojan will be the tool itself, for me, the Excel tool is the Trojan, because it's a simple tool to use. It will be hopefully used by the Geo community, but then it will be the presentation from Christine, who will be for me, basically the paramount of what we can do with those geodata management principle, machine actionable type of support.
Thank
so
you,
Claire,
Lionel.
I have understand your question, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so sorry, Claire, yes, it will be the presentation from Marie-Christine about the so-called machine actionable. You will learn this in a minute.
Benjamin, you have raised hand. I hope I did not miss it before.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Thanks in advance for this representation. I have a general question, because it seems to me that with this data management plan or with this assessment tool, you are mainly handling data sets, input and output data sets. And sometimes when it comes to data management plan, the concept of data is quite, or can be quite wide, and it could also include, for example, publications and also code software. That this is something that is sometimes released in European research projects. I don't know if you have also included this way of assessing both publication and software, or do you leave this part to the dissemination part or to the exploitation part of the research project?
Nicolas, you raise your hand, so maybe you want to answer, or?
Maybe not fully, but we had the, but I remember we had the issue because several of our pilots have applications that are okay based on data, but they don't generate archives of data. They create information on the fly that they provide to the user. And when we went through the detail of the GEO data management principle and the implementation guidelines, it seems that it was worded very well for large archives of data sets that are stored, for example. It would work very well. But in the case of some of our pilots, we were wondering if this was easy to interpret for their own particular application. That's why at some point in the document, we had to expand the concept of data to include also services, so that we give flexibility because we have such a broad, diverse panel of pilots that we can give flexibility so that they can read and respond to the questions with their own context. And I must say it was one of the difficulties we had. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to add that I put my eShape hat, and as a matter of fact, working on that, and when we have tried really to implement and the data management principles and assess how they were implemented, we have read differently, I would say, the data management principles, and we have seen that they were very much data oriented in a time where we have more and more application services which are interoperable, and as you say, interactive, and applications on the cloud that you can run and which are not really data, but tools to produce data, where the licenses are completely different. And we have seen that the deliverable from the pilots are very diverse. As you say, Benjamin, they can be documentations, they can be GitHub, they can be open source. And I would say that, Lionel, we did not ask the pilots to document the data management principles for each of the products outcomes they had from the pilots, but it could have been a way to do it. I think it would have been maybe too heavy from them. They would have complained. Maybe Lionel will be able to tell us at the moment how much time you need to document the data management self-assessment tool, and so how long a pilot needed to work to get a data management plan. This is very important too, that it's not such a big investment, I think. But I would say that in the eShape pilot, in the eShape project, Lionel has made a very big effort to make all the deliverables from the pilots, the documents, the videos, the training support, and so on, fair, making them accessible via the Knowledge Hub and the GEO resources. So it's yes and no. We did not assess each of the outcomes with the tool. And I agree with you, Benjamin, that it could be an evolution from the principles to really consider all the different types of deliverable we can have: data, services, documentation, open source, and maybe evolve the tool more explicitly on each of them. Lionel?
Yes, yeah, thanks, Benjamin, for your question. So regarding reports, as you mentioned them, so I think it is not per se considered that way in the geodata management principle and FAIR, but you have the DMP1, which is metadata for discovery. And then basically, as mentioned by Marie-Françoise, you can have some way to document the outcome of your service. And you can do so, and they recommend this to do so in a so-called standard interoperable approach using metadata. So you can create some metadata in a catalog that will basically on itself be interoperable. It can be search harvested by many other crawlers in the scope of Geo. This is the discovery and access broker, and then you have your result on the Geo web portal. And then you can basically provide additional documentation, and it is perfectly the good way to go as you create a package, and this could be as well mimic on the Geo Knowledge Hub as a Geo Knowledge package, where you have some link to the tool, to the application, to the service, to the GitHub, to the archive, to the Jupyter Notebook, and to a documentation that will explain exactly what is the purpose in a more, let's say, friendly reading type of way than purely, let's say, code and source. So this could be covered under the DMP1, metadata for discovery, and FAIR1, which is making data findable, including provision for metadata.
And the data management principle 4 is documentation. So all this related information that makes the data usable can also be included here.
So I don't know if it answers to your question, Benjamin.
Okay, thank you. Yes, in fact, I was just also interested in these things because it's not only trying to have this plan or this assessment tool, but also trying to find also this valuable metadata so that it could feed in the later instance the GEOS portal, so that the final users in the discovery phase could be able to use also the metadata that the ones that are introduced, the ones that are producing either data sets or services or whatever could be used. In fact, I am also working on ontologies in this regard, and there was also a taxonomy from years called EO taxonomy that could have been used here just to separate or distinguish between data sets, services, even EO applications that might have been used here, but it's just a first thought.
The metadata shell, as I say, will support what you say. If it's binded with a vocabulary, whatever it will be, is it a standard or the one from us, which is more basically business oriented, it will be fine, but definitely metadata or granule from the GeoKnowledge Hub would be a good way to investigate regarding this.
Okay, thank you.
So Joan Mazo, welcome, Joan. You comment in the chat that in your opinion, data created on the fly is not managed by the producer once delivered. It is a service that needs to be managed by the producer. Data created on the fly is managed by the user directly. And we need to think more about it.
I mean, it's true that the data management principle implementation guidance is not thinking about services. Well, it definitely thinks about services, but it's not the focus of the document. Well, in the modern world, where more and more data is produced on the fly, we definitely need to think more about that, and maybe we need principles for managing services on the web. That's, I mean, just an idea.
Well, I would like to add that the last revision of the document progressively is introducing this concept. Not fully as much as maybe we could do it, but we have opened the document to that quite a lot in the release that was published recently and is already also accessible via the Knowledge Hub. Claire Austin in the chat, is the output form E-shaped tool readable, understandable by machines, and directly usable by machine action automated systems?
No. It's a simple Excel spreadsheet, and then you will see what Marie-Christine will present. And this is exactly where we want to go. And we will go.
Okay, so we can comment a little bit rapidly on the poll. The question was, would you be, because I don't know if everyone sees the poll after the question we had before. So would you be interested in using the presented data management self-assessment tool? So we have 73% that answers yes, 0 that answers no, and 4 over 15 people, so 27% that answers not sure. I think they need to look deeper to what it looks like. Lionel, can you answer the question I have made before? How long was it for a pilot to document the data management plan?
Basically, if it take me two afternoons. So one, I didn't do it one in a row, but basically you can, if you want to, let's say 2 sessions of 3 hours, 4 hours, if you want to really deep down, dig into the question. And again, sometimes you don't have answers I would not say I don't understand the question myself. I've been in that work for many years, but I have supported a lot of the eShape pilot that say, hey, I need support from this. It was basically the code from Nicolas. You need to support, to educate, to make sure that the people does not feel DMP as something boring. I have a DMP to fill. No, it is valuable for you. And this is the message I want to bring. Do it. Take, let's say, take an hour just reading the question. Okay. And then basically it will echo something about your pilot, about your own application, your own work, your daily works. And I think it will be very valuable. But answering this, it takes me basically, let's say, one day, several sessions, and then I do it again because, again, I mentioned that the FAIR4, when it comes to licensing, I myself didn't see the trap. And then it come back to the time to assess all the license was a bit longer. It takes time to read the license, to understand all of those licenses from CAMS, from the NASA SRTM, from the MERA, from the IGN. And then I was quite confident to say, hey, I'm lucky. We are all in CC BY spirit. That means that we can use the data, repackage, and provide them to the user, provide that we put credit. And this takes time as well. But again, it's not something you should do in data management plan. Believe me, it's a very, very insight of your own work exercise. You may be basically rewarded with doing so.
So I hope that saying that with 1 or 2 days of work, you are sure that you have documented a data management plan which is consistent, exhaustive.
This one.
Exhaustive, covering the geodata management principles and the FAIR principles. You have finished to convince the 4 participants that were not sure they wanted to use the tool.
Again, just read it. Take the time just to read the question and you will be rewarded doing so.
Any question, any comment, or we go to the next talk? Okay, no comments. So I just share my screen rapidly to introduce Marie-Christine. So, up. So Marie-Christine Giacomo Berbal, she holds a PhD in molecular biology, but then now she works with the INIS CNRS, a research support unit of the Scientific Research National Center in France. And she has been fully dedicated to research on data management since 2012. So she is bringing here a lot of expertise and an outside view on this tool, which has been made by EO experts. And Marie-Christine brings this external vision, which is so important for us to identify what can be the potential development of this tool in the future. Marie-Christine, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hello, thank you for your interest in DMP OPDOR. So I just want to be really precise. DMP OPDOR is really a tool initially to draft data management plans. But we've made quite a lot of development around this tool, excuse me, to really help researchers in the first stage to understand and also to really provide them with the tools and the expertise in that field area, because for us, researchers come with their scientific expertise, they have a project or research activities, it's what their skill is about, and through a data management plan, a lot of new knowledge is expected and new skills, and is something that a lot of other actors, super unit can bring and to them. So just quickly, because I already introduced DMP Opidor in a previous talk. So DMP Opidor, the last version of DMP Opidor, provides a data model that is compliant with Science Europe core requirement for data management plan and with the RDA DMP common standards, which is an exchange format. It also implements many of the RDA DMP common standard principles. The aim of DMP Opidor is really to encourage and facilitate the FAIR principles implementation, but also other principles, and the application of founder and institutional data policies. It is designed to really to enable the communities, thematic communities, for example, or disciplinary communities, to really provide their advice and expertise, and also to integrate when it is possible and when it is helpful, because the states of registries, it can be very heterogeneous and not always of good quality. But when it's possible, then you can integrate some registries to really guide the researcher or the data producer through data management. So quickly, the organization of this model. So it contains first part that you find in the general information. Is there, you can provide information about the project or your research activities, the funding, the partners, the principal investigator, some metadata about the plan. And then you can declare one or several research output. So research output including dataset, but also some code, software, and some other research output for some discipline is quite important to really preserve and document, for example, some physical samples. And then for each of this research output, then you can really describe the data management process at each stage of the life cycle. And also there are some important questions about legal issues, ethical issues, and personal data issues when it is applicable. So I've just took a few screenshots to really illustrate how DMP Opidor can enable the implementation of FAIR principle and if extended to geo data management principle. So first, just to remind that you have to choose this particular template, which is the Science Europe, what we call Science Europe structure template to create your plan. Yeah, please tick the box mock if you just want to test the apps, because then otherwise we'll have problems in the statistical results. And then you may select any funder or institutional data policies if it is applicable. So through the general information, as I said, you can describe the project activities. Is for the project funded by the French funding agency, where you can reuse the information that you might have filled already when you submitted your project. And so you get all the information about description of the project, the principal investigator, the funding, of course, it is if it is approved, and the partners. We really encourage the use of persistent identifiers. So whether for the funding agency, for the contributors, for the affiliation. And you can, at each stage also, you can link documents that are really important to document the context of data production. Like you can have the publication, you can have maybe some reports, some experimental plans. A lot of people already ask us whether we could have some image of this experimental plant, because they are really quite useful tool for data producer at the beginning of a project or an activity to really visualize all the different research output that are going to be produced through that activities, and what has to be managed at the different stages. also you can link other data management plan that could be related to that project. Oops, sorry. Okay. So I'm not going to cover all the different sections or questions. So if we stopped on the first one, so in my example, I declare that I would have 3 different data sets or research outputs. Is what you can see at the top of the screen. And for each one of them, then you can go through all the different questions, and you'll be guided through examples, through lists, default answers, tooltips, how to answer this question, and which one to choose actually. So at the bottom, you can see that it's possible to switch actually our formula, because it's possible to really customize this description for each question. And it's where you one community, for example, the geo community, could decide to have some more information, and it's possible to extend the formula, and it's possible to include really specific registries or specific control vocabularies. So I illustrate this. So in that case, if you use the customize formula, then in that case, it's an illustration for the agronomy community. And so we have included the thesaurus that was created by INRAE, which is an institute in agronomy in France. And so you can see that it also has an education purpose, because we already into thesaurus and the URI of the concept and everything. So it's really into the training of adopting and practicing to a fair principle. Reuse data, Lionel just mentioned that case. So it is really important to cite the data that have been reused through your project or your activity, and to encourage also the citation of this data. And as Lionel mentioned, also to really check whether there is a license and what are the conditions of reuse. This is important to know whether you can reuse them, and how or which license you're going then be able to apply to your own data at the end of the workflow. Other example here is when you reach the question of how your data has been collected or produced. Again, so you can describe, and you can also select any equipment that is available in your own organizational or institutional or community environment. So it's possible to really include a pre-selected list of instruments. And again, it's possible to really reference the method that you've been applying. Another point about the documentation and data quality, which are really important for the reuse of data. So to really encourage to describe how the data is going to be organized, structured, how it's going to be documented, to link all the documentation that can be associated to the data, and select the standard metadata that you should apply or should use to describe your data in a more formal way. And again, this list can be really selected, specified for specific communities. Currently, this list is extracted from the RDA metadata standard catalog. but it can also be customized and really prepare and for the community. It's also possible, can't see it on the slide, but it's also possible also to recommend some tools to capture this metadata. But storage and backup, which is something is quite important because one of problem with data is many data have been stored on computer, on hard disk and have been lost. It's really to encourage to have a really safe storage for the data and backup, etc. And usually the researcher, when they ask a question, they're not really aware about the storage spaces that are available to them and where they can, how they can back up their data and etc. And so there were some data center who have been interested in really specifying some formula for this question. So you have the common information, but also some very specific parts which are going to help the data producer to request for data storage space. In that case, it's a data center in Montpellier. And for example, researcher from the University of Montpellier can request for some space in advance. We have other cases like that where other data center have also customized their formula. Again, a way to customize and to really specify some part of the data management plan is on the data sharing issue. And there again, it's possible to really propose a selected list, for example, of data repository that are really relevant, recognized, maybe certified, which is even better, where the data can be deposited and shared. And by selecting this kind of repository, for example, then it's possible also you can see that to get some information about the repository, where it is located, whether it's certified, which persistent identifier system it is using, because these are many questions that usually are really difficult to answer. And it's really, the idea is really to provide the most information that's going to be useful for the applicant, for the researcher, the data producer. Voilà. So it's a help. And it's also an illustration, and it gives example, and it's really a educational purpose as well. And so at the end of it, you have a full DMP. So this, well, a DMP is never done in one stage, in one day. It's something that has to be updated all along of the project. So they could have different versions at the initial stage, intermediate stage, and final stage. But it's something that evolved along the time. And so at the end, you can have a full DMP as a document in a PDF format or in a doc format, but also in this case, you can have also a JSON format, and it's where it can become interesting when you really want to assess the maturity of the data management, whether all the principles have been fulfilled. And so it's where maybe, it would be interesting to link it to the tool that Lionel talked about earlier. So just to conclude, DMP tool is really a collaborative tool, but not only for the data producer, data managers, but also for all the other stakeholders of this ecosystem. Because as I showed you, a lot of information and guidance, recommendation will come from the other stakeholders, from the thematic communities, for example, and this is going really to help the data producer who has to produce this data management plan and really try to reduce his burden. So it aggregates really skills coming from all these different parties and knowledge. And the idea is really to streamline the management process for the data producer. And DMP OPIDOR is really continuously evolving to meet the need of its end users. So we've been talking a lot about researchers and data management plan, but we have some requests and we are working on that from like platform laboratories who are really want to prepare also some management plan for the data that they are producing.
Thank you very much, Marie-Christine. You have really closed the loop, I would say, between the data life cycle that we introduced at the start of the dialogue series and now the data management plan, going through the importance of all the data management principles. I think that your presentation was very eye-opening, I would say, demonstrating that there are tools that exist that have been made by the broader community to develop the data management plans, showing that this is the way to go. So eShape has done that in a, I would say, in a bottom-up approach, very intuitively. We can see that this is really the way to go. We offer something as a start, but going to OPIDOR, we have means to use that as an interoperability support with the bigger community. So this is a very great and bringing a lot of potential progress. Any comment from, I didn't see any comment in the chat. Let me check again. Any question from the audience? Yes, one, well, Benjamin?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, thanks for the presentation. I missed some linkage with personal data within this DMP tool. I don't know if this is something that I miss or this is something that is not explained here, or this is something that is intentionally left apart. But sometimes when you manage so many data sets, sometimes obviously there comes to problems with personal data and GDPR. And this is something that must be seriously considered, especially because there was one slide about the storage things, and maybe with personal data, this is something to be sensitively managed.
Yeah, okay, thanks for your question. I didn't show all the stages actually,
okay,
because yeah, I was supposed to talk only 7 minutes. I think I already took longer than that. So, but you're really welcome to go and have a look. And you will get the slides anyway. So you will see in the third one where I show a really a brief overview of the data model that, yeah, personal data issue, we're dealing with this aspect. If you look at the current formula in DMP OPIDOR, is not really detailed, because it's some part of work that are still yeah, in our backlog. Actually, we have already exchanged quite a lot with these committees, but we haven't, at the moment, we haven't reached a point where we would agree on a common way to structure that information. And also, not everything has to be maybe present in the data management plan. We don't want to have redundant tools also, you know. The idea is really to link the different information, but not always to capture everything in the data management plan. But yeah, the question is raised and you can't answer it, but usually you also then interact with other committees to answer that question, this kind of questions. But yeah, it has to list. Yeah.
Okay. Joan Mazot completes that managing personal data is particularly important for citizen science, where potentially each observation is connected to different users with personal info describing him, her.
Yeah.
I can add that in the eShape pilot, one of the eShape pilot was working in a country where you can go to jail if you do not respect the good management of personal data.
Yeah.
So yes, crediting is important. Managing personal data is also very important.
Yeah, sure. That's no problem. I mean, we've been also exchanging, but it's all these things takes time to, to exchange with different stakeholders because there are a lot of initiatives everywhere. And now it's really a matter of trying to harmonize and get some, or at least common structure. Yeah, there was the idea at some point to have, specialized, customized template for research output where there would be some personal data. Yeah.
So going to the poll answers, if there is no additional comment, I apologize because we should have opened the poll to several answers. We have seen that in eShape, we had to implement GEO and FAIR principles. So several principles should have been an option. We can see that people are aware of the existence of these principles and that they should comply to it. There are others which are also open. So it is interesting to have a repository or a tool that helps check the compliance with the different principles, because we have seen that making a data management plan compliant with one set of principles is not easy if you go from scratch. Having something compliant to several of them can also be a lot of work. And I think that this is I hope we have convinced the audience that making a data management plan is not just a burden that you have to do for the stakeholders who have paid you and say, we want to have into the deliverable a data management plan. It's not just to satisfy them. It is something that can help all the participants of a project exchange and leverage their different skills, align to do something on the same quality track, and going through all these principles is something that helps you making good work, ready to be exploited operationally as a business, complying with the licenses and so on. Bente, you want to add something before we ask everyone to open the videos? You can comment while everyone is putting the video to make a last snapshot of this audience, wonderful audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just, Marie-Christine, as I understand, you are interested in having people from the GEO community help you further develop your self-assessment tool, right?
Yeah, I just want to make clear, as I said, it's not at the moment a self-assessment tool. It's more, we really want to help implement the principle, and then you can assess. So it's the linkage between the MP Opidor and the tool that Lionel talked about that can make it an assessment tool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the wording. It's just the wording.
Yeah.
Anyways, I put the link to Opidor in the chat so that people can come and contact you via this link, right, Marie-Christine?
Yes, but it's Opidor is like a portal. It's DMP Opidor, which is the tool, but it's okay. You can reach us through Opidor as well. It's no problem. Yeah.
Great. So this is an encouragement for all here. And the second thing is that I also provided a link, the same link that you registered for this dialogue, for tomorrow's dialogue, where we are going back and diving into the 4 principles for usability. So, and I encourage you to join us then as well.
Yeah.
So you find the links and also a picture and information about who the speakers are.
Yes, thank you, Bente. To remind that, I say that our logical flow was to finish with this dialogue. Unfortunately, because we have been disturbed for the usability one, we will make it tomorrow. So you have the end before the middle, but I'm sure you are experimented and you can understand that. Thank you all of you to put the videos so we can share that we had an amazing audience for this dialogue. And we hope to see several of you tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, yes. I'm ready with my screen shooting, but you have to turn. So Joan, Claire, Rabia, Eugenio, we see you are here still here. Thank you for being
staying
so
longer.
interested. Yes.
Staying longer. So the videos are published in the Knowledge Hub. Maybe we will try to make some work, Bent, also to extract the links which can be relevant with the presentation and put them as a document connected into the Knowledge Hub.
Yes, we are indeed collecting all the presentations, and we are filling this. All this information will be found on the Geo Knowledge Hub, obviously, and we will also share it in other ways. And we encourage all of you also to share it within your communities. I think we have a mutual interest in sharing this knowledge and the skills.
What time is tomorrow?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock,
It's 3
okay.
o'clock Central European Time, 1 o'clock UTC. We had to change it to make this extraordinary session. So
thank you very much. I think it was an amazing dialogue again. Thanks to
Yes.
our great speaker, but also to the audience who participated in the polls, who has had questions, and thank you for being there.
absolutely. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.